Donald Trump offers Iran a choice: open the Strait of Hormuz or expect annihilation of your electric national grid. Is that the path to peace or to apocalypse now?
This is all wrong. I shouldn't be up here. I should be back in school on the other side of the ocean. Yet you all come to us young people for hope. How dare you!
Boring. Boring. Boring.
You got it work. Don't tell us what we're gonna feel. We're trying to solve a problem. Don't tell us what we're gonna feel.
I'm not telling you.
Because you're in no position to dictate that. Remember what you're doing. You're in no position to dictate what we're gonna feel.
I call again for an immediate ceasefire in Gaza, the return of the sausages, the hostages.
Greetings, one and all. I'm Lembit Öpik here on Lembit Öpik Live on Unprecedented TV. Please do like and subscribe. Go to @Unprecedented TV. You'll find us on YouTube and literally hundreds of shows for you to review, enjoy, maybe criticize as well. We have two promises. First of all, we share the facts as best we can establish them. And also we express our opinions, but we don't mix those up with the facts. We're ruthless with news, gracious with views. And hopefully that gives you a refreshing honesty that seems to have evaporated in the mainstream media and also arguably in mainstream politics too. We're discussing a very current affair now, and if you're watching this on the archive, you can see how accurate our predictions are. At time of broadcast, we're halfway through an ultimatum from President Donald Trump to the Iranians saying open the Strait of Hormuz, a fairly narrow piece of ocean for oil and other transportation, or face annihilation of your electricity national grid across the whole of Iran. Now, whether he can do that or not is a different question. He's certainly very explicitly made that promise. We'll look at the words in a minute or two. But what is the game plan here? Can this work? And will this lead to peace in the Middle East? Many say no. Many say that the wavering commentary of Donald Trump suggests that he doesn't have a clear focus. Others seem to be defending him and saying, no, these are courageous decisions which have to be made. So where do we stand? And how much better or worse will things become when this 48-hour ultimatum comes to pass? Joining me now, it's Warren Thornton, who is one of the most experienced military strategists I have the honor of knowing. Greetings, Warren. What do you make of Donald Trump's threat? We'll have a look at the wording in a minute, but your big picture assessment of where we stand in the Iran war.
Big picture assessment. This is, it really is a very stupid thing to say. They've tried all manner of things, and Iran have shown a remarkable resilience and a capability of, if you do something to Iran, they can do it straight back to you. You've only got to look at the nuclear sites. Now, they didn't hit the nuclear sites, but they certainly indicated and shown that they can do so. And of course, when they did that with the gas, then they did that as well. And of course, shutting the Straits of Hormuz down was always going to happen the moment they attacked. They said they would do it, and they did it. So far, of course, Donald Trump has turned around and said, you can't have a nuclear weapon. Well, they didn't want one. And of course, he's then turned around and said that we have to overthrow the government. That's not worked out. In fact, it's unified the Iranian government, just as it did in the 80s, when there was far more chance of overthrowing them. So it's a completely idiotic and very, very senseless lashing out, like a petulant child who gets sent to his room and is determined to smash everything in the hallway on his way to the room.
Let's have a look at the wording, if we can get that up there. Thank you. Let's get this. Writing on his Truth Social platform, Trump said, if Iran doesn't fully open without threat the Strait of Hormuz within 48 hours from this exact point in time, the United States of America will hit and obliterate their various power plants, starting with the biggest one first. Thank you for your attention to this matter, President Donald J. Trump. Now, assuming the US follows through with that threat, this report says that would give it until 11:44 p.m. UK time. That's 23:44 GMT on Monday to fully open the strait. What's going to happen?
Very simply, if he bombs it, then Iran will reply in kind. I would imagine they'll go for very much desalination points and power plants all around. Now, of course, Iran will be without lighting on stuff like that. But you have to remember who you're dealing with here. Now, the ideology is something we are not used to in the West. And Iran will continue this fight. Remember that they used to literally thankful for a martyr's death when they would walk across Iraqi minefields just to explode the mines to allow the Iranian soldiers to get through there so that they could drive them off the land. This is the people that you are dealing with. This is not Venezuela that you are dealing with. And of course, to do this is another escalation. And we eventually get to one of two outcomes here. We eventually get to the point where America are so angry and so upset, they decide to try and take an option that Russia and China would not like, and therefore which plunges us very much closer, shall we say, to something we all don't want to contemplate. Or America has to swallow its pride. It can, sail home and claim victory if it likes. And of course, it goes home with it in actual fact, goes home with its tail between its legs. They're not going to get regime change. They're not going to stop them now. And now Iran have turned around and said that if they want talks, then they have these conditions, which means America paying through the nose. America too, shall we say, vaunted pride-wise to do that. So this situation is going to escalate. The Iranians are not going to open the Straits of Hormuz. That's done. That's done. They've already said so.
In fact, yeah, there's one of the headlines. There we are. Thank you. Middle East crisis live. Iran will completely close Strait of Hormuz if Trump acts on infrastructure threats, says IRG. Statement from Iran's Revolutionary Guards comes after the US threatened to target energy infrastructure. So that's a clear escalation. And what's interesting about it is the Iranians have proved themselves capable of frightening shipping owners into not passing through it. I think it's 20 kilometers. That's about 12 miles wide. It's actually narrower than the English Channel, and therefore, I suppose everything's squashed together. So Iran could do what it says here, Warren.
Yeah, absolutely. And what are you going to do if they do decide to close it? Are you going to suddenly try and get hold of Karg Island, or you're going to try and capture the entire coastline? Well, that won't work, because you'll then become sitting targets, and you're going to need a lot of people to go into that war. You're certainly going to need, don't forget, how many people died in the Iran-Iraq war. And of course, America were backing Iraq at the time. And of course, that went on for 8 years, 1.5 million people dead. And of course, it was a bitter and bloody battle, but they never gave up, not once. And here's the problem that we have, Lembit, is that he doesn't really get it. He's a businessman, so's Witkoff, so's Jared Kushner, and they're sort of on-the-fly businessmen, really. When it comes to diplomacy or dealing with things that you don't quite understand, you have to have something of the diplomat about you, and they don't. This is threats and bullying, and they're not, because it's worked so far, they're thinking that this is the way forward again, and it really isn't.
You mentioned Karg Island. There we are. This this piece of land right at the top of the Persian Gulf. It's quite far away from the Strait of Hormuz, which is the pointy bit on the right of the picture. Why would they consider occupying Karg Island, and how on earth would they get there?
Well, you've got three choices with Karg Island, and none of them are any good. First of all, they want to occupy it because it is one of the major hubs of oil coming out of the Persian Gulf, and of course it would give them some control over the Straits of Hormuz. Occupying it is not the difficult thing. Keeping it is the difficult thing. You're not going to sail through there, because they could then mine the whole of the Persian Gulf and the Straits of Hormuz, and of course around Karg Island, and also mine the infrastructure, blow it up rather than let you have it. So that would cause enormous casualties. So what are you going to do? Well, you could do planes flying over. that would then put you within range of them being able to knock planes out of the sky. And no matter what CENTCOM are saying, which is the American military command, the Iranians are quite capable and have shown they are capable of knocking American aircraft out of the sky, including the much vaunted F-35, which have been taken down, and a couple of others, including tankers and F-15s. If you believe they've all been accidents, then I've a bridge to sell you to Carg Island. The other way to do it, of course, is by a parachute drop. And then, of course, you could drop 27, maybe 10,000 Marines on the island. They could take the island after a battle. There's lots of body bags would be needed. And, of course, then keeping hold of it, you are sitting on Carg Island and you are a drone and missile sitting duck. So none of these is a good solution.
Why Carg Island? Here's a picture. Is the US considering seizing Iran's Carg Island? Is this question from Radio Free Europe and Radio Liberty.
Yes.
Obviously, there's a lot of oil infrastructure there, but I don't see what they achieved, because then they've got this little enclave that's pretty much surrounded by hostility, and the supply chain, as you say, is fraught with danger, because if you fly in, you could get shot down. If you sail in, you could get torpedoed, and there's no land route.
Yes, exactly that. This is not like Syria. The war planners are thinking they can do what they did with Syria. We'll capture an oil field or two in the north of Syria, and we'll just sit there. We'll put, we'll put mercenary soldiers in there and engineers and everything else. And then when we're ready, when there's a chance of overthrowing the Syrian government, we'll do that. But they were left, apart from the initial phases, they were pretty much left untouched with the odd, shall we say, barrage. That won't happen with Iran. That will literally be full on. Let's get them off the island, get them off the island, get them off the island. It will be non-stop, and it will be a non-stop barrage. And there will be many. Making a prediction here, Lembit, that he's going to go boots on the ground in a limited fashion. And two, if he does so, they are going to be going home in body bags like you wouldn't believe. And of course, the propaganda machine will be trying to say, oh, well, not that many died, but there'll be an awful lot of death.
The map, if we can get the map up again, or the picture, yeah, thanks. That doesn't really paint a very encouraging picture. As I say, the Strait of Hormuz is the pinch point that anything would have to go through. You put a battleship through there, massive big target, 1,000 feet long, 12 miles wide. It's almost impossible to miss.
Yeah, exactly that. And here's the thing, Lembit, that people aren't recognizing. Iran is a huge country. It's 2.5 times the size of Ukraine. They have much more missile capability and much more drone capability than anybody that America have fought recently. They've got the Russians and the Chinese and the North Koreans who can supply them. And very, very simply, when you consider that the American Navy and the Air Force and the Saudi Arabians, who are not without their friends when it comes to, shall we say, terrorists and other people, they haven't managed to subdue the Houthis, who have got far less equipment, far less men.
Yes, and I just, before we move on from this particular picture, I would not want to be posted right up there.
No.
You're not going to be sleeping soundly at night, are you? If you're there. I don't really understand how it's also relevant to the Strait of Hormuz, because it's quite far away. I don't know what the scale here is, but I guess it must be a couple of 100 kilometers at least.
Yeah. Yeah, it really isn't. What it is America flexing their military might. Look, we took Carg Island, blah, 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 and all the rest of it. You can walk around like an untrumpeted Napoleon. This isn't going to work here. The American idea of, if you do not agree with us, we will replace you. Well, that hasn't worked. Okay, we'll bomb you into submission. That is not working. What's next?
Okay, we'll come back to that question in just a moment. You're watching me, Lembit Öpik, with Warren Thornton on Lembit Öpik Live, as we talk about a very current issue, and therefore you'll know very quickly if our predictions are accurate or not here on @Unprecedented TV. Of course, this isn't the only show. We have an absolutely great new episode of Tim Scott Uncancelled. Go and take a look at that in the archive. Super Chaps Super Show, Tim Scott Uncancelled, when he looks behind the headlines to find stories that you need to know about. He buys the papers so that you don't have to. Back to the present day, we're talking about the situation in the Persian Gulf and whether we're heading towards some kind of an apocalypse in the region or potentially worse. I'm talking with Warren Thornton here. Just before the break, you were talking about the unpalatable options, the idea of going to Carg Island as some kind of a public relations stunt. It reminds me of what the, in my view, very, very poor military leader Vladimir Zelensky, professional clown, amateur politician, did when they invaded. What was the area called? What they called it? Which part of Russia did they invade? And then
are we talking about when they decided to try and take over Snake Island?
No, I thought it was an entire part of.
Oh, Crimea, you mean?
No. It's in the current conflict. They went up to Kursk, was it?
Oh, Kursk, yes, yeah, and lost over 70,000 troops.
Yeah, for no benefit because they had to withdraw anyway. It seems to me that this is very much the same kind of danger going to Carg Island, but nevertheless, there's a threat. The threats that we're seeing from, if we can get rid of the logo at the top for a minute. New threats from Trump and Iran heighten risks to energy supplies. It seems to me he's actually playing the same game. He seems to be making threats which they might be able to carry out in the short term, but doesn't have any long-term strategic benefit because it would cost billions upon billions to try to secure Carg Island in the long term.
Yeah, exactly that. Well, the war is costing around about $3 billion a day. The assessment of it only costing so far 20 billion is complete nonsense. It's around about 3 billion a day. So it's just going to keep escalating and escalating. And of course, you've got the cost of moving all those troops. Then you've got the logistics of trying to feed lots of people, 7,000 miles away. You're looking at trying to feed supply lines and everything else. Whereas Iran is right there. And of course, Russia and China can supply Iran very, very quickly, very smartly, with better equipment. Let's be honest here. They're already running out of missiles. And there comes a time, Lembit, when they run out of missiles. And then what do? And let's face it, because they've been sponsoring Saudi Arabia in bombing Yemen, they've been firing 2 missiles a day for the last 2 years into Yemen. And of course, you've given loads and loads of stuff to Ukraine, loads of weapons and materials and everything to Ukraine. The cupboard is far more bare than they're letting on. And finally, XS actually yesterday admitted that, every time there's a problem, it's always Ukraine. Well, that tells you that there's a shortage. When he's saying there's a problem, they've given those weapons to Ukraine. Eventually, you run out of weapons, and Iran will not.
So you're saying America has got a bit of a military hardware shortage?
Yeah, absolutely, it has. Well, when you think, for instance, that they turn around and say that 1,000. They're making around. They're not even making 1,000 of these Patriot missiles in a year. Okay, they're making around 850, and that's at a very generous estimate. Yeah. And of course, they're firing anywhere between 10 and 15 of these a day, depending on which base you're on. On some bases, they're firing. So you've got 14 bases within 1,000 kilometers, all firing 8 or 10 of these missiles on average a day. Then times that by 365 and see how many missiles you've got left after 6 to 8 months. Yeah,
and then this Carg Island thing, it's quite a big, I think we may have another picture of it. It's quite a big location.
It is.
Yeah. But at the same time, I just don't see how there's any real protection. You're sitting there on a flat piece of land surrounded by water, and they can take pot shots at you. And blow stuff up.
Exactly that, Lembit. That's what we're saying as military analysts. But of course, Trump is and Kushner and Witkoff. They're about land grabs here, and the war hawks are about land grabs. Remember, they've got Israel pushing them as well because most of the Congress is owned by the Israel lobby, who donate lots of money to their campaigns, and they're making the decisions. But I can tell you this from our Pentagon sources, that the absolutely sweating bullets in the Pentagon and in the military. There's no way they want a bar of this at all. But of course, they're going to have to go in. But the stockpiles are absolutely, the gentleman he fired was absolutely right. The stockpiles will not last long. And of course, what you have to remember is, Lembit, it's going to be nothing compared to the stockpiles of weapons they need to try and defend Cargill Island once they're on it.
No, I just can't see how you defend a flat piece of land like that. There's no real cover. And if they're on the island, although Iran might be loath to blow up its own infrastructure, a couple of well-aimed shots to some of those big terminals, you're going to be surrounded in black smoke and burning oil.
Yeah, they think carpet bombing works, and of course he's buoyed by the success of what's happened in Venezuela, where he got a corrupt military and 2 corrupt leaders in the Rodriguezes to help him out after meetings with the CIA and everything else. Well, that hasn't worked with the Iranians. It really hasn't. And of course, they're willing to fight literally to the last infant, let alone the last man. And of course, this is going to cause major problems because once again, you're fighting on their land. And they've already found out when they backed Ukraine in this war, in the war against Russia, that fighting that far away from home and the supply lines against a really determined military with very good equipment is a major problem. And Israel, here's the problem. If they sail away with their tail between their legs, then Israel is a sitting duck. But Israel wanted this, and now they're bleating because the Iranians haven't folded into a basket.
Yeah, there's B-52 Stratofortress. These are flying from RAF Fairford. I'm very confused by this. This doesn't look like a defensive move to me. Sending massive bombers with 30 tons of bombs to Iran to conduct a war which was initiated by the West. But Keir Starmer seems to have been fooled into thinking this is a defensive action. I don't really see it.
He's not. Britain have been in this war for ages. Akrotiri Air Base has been used to target. It was used to target in June. It's been used to target since, with flights going up in the air. And of course, we had this nonsense of launching missiles at Diego Garcia, which of course never happened. But that is to try and draw Britain into an attacking posture rather than one where they're just letting America load up from their bases. If you are loading bombs from another country, and let's face it, this is exactly what is happening in the Arab Gulf states. The Arab Gulf states are allowing the bases there to be used by Americans to go up and do all sorts of sorties and drop all sorts of bombs. So the Iranians have said, okay, you're in this war. Britain are in this war. If you are allowing people to put, it's not candy bars they're putting on these planes. These are bombs that are going to take lives. And Britain is allowing them now to use their bases publicly. They were doing it privately before. And of course, Keir Starmer is unbelievably stupid. And so is Kemi Badenoch, who's calling for everybody to go out there. But you notice something about these politicians, Lembit. They're not the ones who do the fighting and the dying, or their children. It is always the poor or the what they consider not the elite class who do the fighting and the dying. Same in Vietnam, same in Korea, same in Afghanistan, Iraq, and it will be the same here.
Yeah, these magnificent aircraft in terms of their design, originally coming from the 1940s and at first flew in the 1950s, likely to have a service life of 100 years. That's pretty impressive. Yes. But that just doesn't look very defensive to me. This eight-engined aircraft. Go ahead.
It absolutely isn't. And here's the thing, Lembit, is what happens next, because everybody's now using phosphorus. They're using, obviously, these cluster munitions and everything else. And remember that Great Britain and America were the ones who gave the Ukrainians, they actually gave them depleted uranium shells, which cause all sorts of horrible blastoma cancers. They're dropped by Warthog A-10s or fired by tanks. And of course, they were used extensively in Iraq. And if the Warthog A-10s are going, you can bet the depleted uranium shells are going. Nobody's going to be talking about it, but they're going to wind up on the battlefield.
Okay, so all this bombing and everything else, And back to that threat or that claim by okay. Oh yes, this is a point I wanted to raise. Thanks, Gallery. Trump's changing messages in Iran war. What does it say about U.S. strategy? With the war in its fourth week, the Trump administration sends contradictory messages on how to proceed. So on top of what you just said, it does seem to me that Trump is changing his position hour by hour. At one point, he was talking about scaling down the operation. He said before that he wasn't interested in a ceasefire. And then he issues this ultimatum.
Yeah,
I don't really know what Iran's expected to do, because they could respond to one of those and then it would be out of date.
Yeah. Well, let's put it this way. Trump is in between a rock and a hard place. He's got Susie Wiles, who used to work for Benjamin Netanyahu. Netanyahu wants war. Susie Wiles is the White House chief of staff, so she controls who gets access to Donald Trump and shows him what. And of course, she's a big friend of Israel. Let's put it that way. Then you've got Marco Rubio and many others that are surrounding Trump are all big friends of Israel. So Trump has got nowhere to go, really, because what he's doing is because of that. They know that if they play to his ego, he'll come out and make these outlandish statements. And once he does, oh, Mr. President, you can't possibly back down now. How will it look? And this is exactly what they do. And of course, Trump has walked right into it. But once again, he was meant to drain the swamp, Lembit. He wasn't meant to become the biggest creature swimming in it.
This is the problem. And it does seem that the contradictions are really dangerous, because they could easily be misinterpreted. And Iran is now more or less saying, as far as I can tell, look, say what you want. We're not backing down. Bomb us however much you want. We're not backing down. But sooner or later, you're going to lose, because your war's unpopular in the West. It's costing you a fortune, $3 billion a day. That's pretty pricey.
Yeah.
And go on.
No one wants this war, Lembit. You've got the captured media who will do by the governments or by various institutions that will say whatever they're meant to say. But nobody in England wants the war. Nobody in America wants the war. It's deeply unpopular. Nobody is understanding, including military analysts and everybody else, what it's hoping to achieve. I know that it probably the biggest thing that America would like to achieve is shutting the Golden Corridor, if you like, the north-south link between Iran that helps the BRICS nations and, of course, helps them to trade without having to go through the Strait of Hormuz, which, of course, is not what they want, given that America has spent so much money occupying the Gulf states to make sure that the Straits of Hormuz is pretty much, shall we say, a place that everybody has to go through. But here's where we have a major problem with this, Lembit, is if you don't have an off-ramp, you have to keep escalating until you get to the point where you either lose. And something else that you have to consider, you either win or lose, but something else you have to consider, are Iran at the point now where they think, as Russia do, that the USA and Israel are such an existential threat that one of them has to go?
That's a big statement. Trump's problem is, I suppose, I think he was dragged into this. I think that Donald Trump was dragged into this by Israel. I could be wrong, but it's very hard to see how he gets out of it now, because if he admits that he was following Israel, that looks terribly weak.
Yeah. Well, it is one of those, Lembit. It's a bit like the CIA, once in, never out. Once you get into a war, you're pretty much difficult to get out of it. There are not many presidents of any country that once they've started on a war, Lembit, have then been the president who gets out of it. It is very, very difficult to do without being having a sound beating. And of course, America's ego in this, having had success with overthrowing the Syrian government, success overthrowing the Venezuelan government, is going to be sky high. We can do anything, we can achieve anything. And the reality is, you come up against somebody who has a bit of backbone here.
And Iran is a massive country, and well, there's a map of it. Look how big it is.
Yeah.
A lot of it is desert, but it's got mountains. It's got 90 million people. The most populous country in that picture, I think, in fact, thinking about it.
Here is a problem, Lembit. It's 2.5 times the size, almost 3 times the size of Ukraine. And Russia, with all their advanced equipment and everything else, are having a difficult time taking the whole of Ukraine, even though, you know, Russia fight wars slightly different way. Well, how do you think it's going to go in Iran?
Yeah, it's pretty tricky. And also, when you look around some of the other countries, Afghanistan next door, Turkmenistan,
Yes.
There are a lot of countries that pay lip service to the West, but I'm not sure how deep their loyalty is, how deep is their love, he wrote the song, when they're seeing a regional superpower being smashed up as best the West can, with relatively little clarity in terms of the military objectives.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, already we've seen corridor after corridor of trucks going through Turkmenistan with aid for Iran. And then, of course, you look at the Zangezur corridor, which, of course, is that little strip of land in between Azerbaijan and Armenia at the top of the map there. And, of course, Azerbaijan connects to Russia. They're good friends with Azerbaijan. And, of course, that gives a nice, easy corridor for them to be able to put stuff into Iran. And then, of course, they can always sail it there as well. And they're not going to go, and America are not going to start a direct confrontation with Russia. So America have got problems all over the place. And of course, the Arab states have all turned around and said, well, if things don't change soon, we'll be joining in and we'll be doing what we need to do to secure our passage. Now, Saudi Arabia have come up with a really bad idea here, because Saudi Arabia is not known in a lot of circles, but they do have their friends in terrorist groups, shall we say. And of course, they pretty much threatened that they're going to use them, which of course tells the rest of the world that Saudi Arabia sponsor terrorists as well. And also, given that their military, Lembit, is when they let the Americans in and let the Americans take over their military, pretty much their military is the American military. So what are they going to do?
It's tricky. I wonder. I sense that a lot of these countries in the Middle East are losing patience with being caught literally in the crossfire, which I guess was Iran's intention, where they're frustrated because they tried to talk America out of it. Iran said that we're terribly sorry, lads and lasses, but we got to defend ourselves. You used that word. It's often overused, existential, but it is a crisis of its very existence for Iran. So they're trying to poke the stick. They're poking their neighbors with a stick, saying that we've got to do this. And I'm sure they understand. I'm sure their neighbors get it. They understand what's going on here. And so whatever they say face to face, they're probably sitting there going, oh, how do we stop this mess?
Yeah, I mean, you can't, because America have got you militarily. Iran's position is not unreasonable. If, say, for instance, the Americans were using Scotland and Wales and the Isle of Wight to bomb the UK, we'd be bombing the living daylights out of those places to drive the Americans away. So I'm not being funny, but the Iranian position is perfectly reasonable and perfectly understandable. Reasonable is probably the wrong word, but understandable, certainly. If you are allowing their bombers to take off from there, and you are paying nothing for this, and of course the Americans and Israel are sitting pretty, well, that's not going to happen. If we're going to pay, everybody that's helping them and an ally of America is going to pay too.
Then it leads me to my last observation. And I remember, and I asked my team to get the poster, and they've got it, and we'll put it up in a minute. I remember when I was at school, Mr. Hetherington was the English teacher, and he always struck me as a very thoughtful person. And I guess he was in his 50s, back in the late 70s, early 80s. And he had a poster, which, if we can put it, there it is. Yeah, this poster, which I always assumed was about the Vietnam War. And I always used to look at it. He didn't talk about it, but it was just on his wall in his. He was an English teacher in his English classroom. And I kind of feel the same question. Why? Why do it? The Vietnam War ended in ignominy, interestingly enough, with actually some of the same hardware, like the B-52 bomber we showed before, which bombed the hell out of North Vietnam.
It did.
And absolutely had linebacker 1, linebacker 2, all these very fancily named operations. But in the end, North Vietnam won. America lost hearts and minds, even though they were massively superior in terms of their military equipment. They couldn't push home the advantage. Is this Trump's Vietnam?
Yeah, it's looking like it's going to turn out that way. Let's hope it doesn't turn out with the same cost of lives, because over 50,000 Americans were killed in that war, and of course many hundreds of thousands, in fact well over 1 million Vietnamese. But the problem that we have, of course, is eventually America have to sail away. In Korea they sail away, in Vietnam they went away, in Afghanistan they flew away, and in Iraq they flew away. And now we are seeing Iraqi militants bombing US embassy and US bases in Baghdad. So the Iraqis don't want them there. And of course, this is a problem for America. America have really made themselves deeply unpopular over the last few years. And of course, the bombastic nature of the way that they've gone about this, of course, has won them few friends. And of course, Israel, which when I was a child, everybody felt sorry for because of the Holocaust, have basically, which is quite incredible, Israel have gone down the same route as the 1930s Germans used to use in terms of grabbing land and wiping out people and land snatching and everything else. And of course, Israel have never been more unpopular, and America have never been more unpopular on the world stage than they are now. Now you have to change, because you can't keep killing people, grabbing land and grabbing their resources. Eventually, the whole world is going to turn against you, and then they're going to line up with Russia and China, and then you've got a problem.
Well, we're talking about Apocalypse now, which of course was the name of a film about, it's really based on Joseph Conrad's Heart of Darkness, but essentially based in the Vietnam War frame. I wonder if people are watching this live, then we're on ultimatum day, where Donald Trump will have to do something or nothing at 11:44 p.m. Greenwich Mean Time if Iran does not open the Strait of Hormuz. So either Iran opens it, or Trump, all eyes will be on Trump, and Trump has to decide what to do. What do you think will happen?
Trump's bomb it. He may not bomb it straight away. He may give them another 24 hours and say, well, we've given them this and we're trying to get people. But they are furiously trying to open a backdoor channel to Iran to go, come on, let's open the Straits of Hormuz. And Iran, having already been in consultations and everything else, have no trust in America whatsoever. They have no trust in Israel whatsoever. And many people have died. And Iran are literally sitting there and going, what is the point of talking to these people? Yeah. They're completely crazy. They're bombing our cities. They're killing our leaders and everything else. There is no trust to be had with them. There is no dialogue. So bad is it that they're trying to open backdoor channels with people like Russia and China and everybody else. They even turned around and said, we don't want Oman as part of the negotiations. And the reason they don't want Oman as part of the negotiations, because Omanis turned around and said, yes, they had agreed everything. It was perfectly okay. And of course, we don't understand why the Americans have gone and bombed them. Now they're trying to get the Kuwaitis and the Saudi Arabians and various other states, to Qataris especially, to go and talk to them. Well, Iran are not going to be happy with Qatar because, of course, the last time they were negotiating, the Iranian negotiators were sitting in a place in Qatar, and America went and bombed it. So this has got nowhere to go, Lembit, except for Trump either to make the Iran are not going to open the Straits of Hormuz. America will either have to bomb it or have a humiliating climb down. My money is on America bombing it after a brief delay to try and get some sort of idiotic pretense at a negotiation going.
Thank you so much. Well, soon enough we'll know what happens. It's a dangerous time. We thank Warren Thornton for his position. I hope for a climb down. I don't mind if America tries to save face by claiming a victory. What I don't want to see is the claiming of more lives. We've seen some horrendous horrors, the deaths of 170 odd girls in a primary school, unimaginable pain for the families. We've seen civilian deaths on all sides. And we've seen the potential blackout of the whole of Iran. 90 million people, of whom 88 million have nothing to do with the military. So I hope for a climb down. Very soon we'll know. Today we'll know if you're watching it live. But what worries me most is if there isn't a climb down, how far will it go? We live in a dangerous time. So much conflict and so little resolution. Why don't we just give peace a chance? I'm Lembit and Warren. Please do like and subscribe to @Unprecedented TV on YouTube. You've been watching Lembit and Warren live. Let's hope for a good day.
Immediate ceasefire in Gaza. The return of the sausages.